Happy Friday, everybody. Happy December 1st, and welcome to Agency Talk. This is Digital Marketer's weekly talk show where we sit down with industry experts and agency professionals. Today's guest is none other than Justin Rondeau, co-owner and president of InvisiblePPC. Since 2010, he's been obsessed with all things data, email optimization, and split testing. He quickly learned that bridging the gap between sales and marketing was a new business puzzle worth tackling. And if you're an OG Digital Marketer fan, you are very familiar with Justin, as he was part of our incredible team here at DM from 2014 to 2020. So we're always happy to sit down and chat with him. Today, we're talking SaaS solutions for agencies. As a reminder, if you're able to, please turn on your cameras so we can see your smiling faces. As always, have fun and engage in the chat. If you do have any questions, please put those in the Q&A tool down at the bottom here in Zoom so we can get those answered for you. As always, we're joined by Mark de Grasse, president of Digital Marketer and host for today's Agency Talk. So without further ado, Mark, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Cameron. All right. Let's talk about some SEO, Justin. I know
SEO? SE no.
SE no.
I suck at SEO. My stuff's like everything's on the PPC side for me.
PPC. Oh, yes. Yeah.
All good.
That's way better because I have way more questions about that. Actually, both. It was funny because I was thinking about I went to the Google headquarters a couple weeks ago, and it was an executive summit, and I had some questions for them, which they totally didn't answer. So I'm hoping
they never will. They never
will. And I've had it on the podcast too. I'm just like, man, you guys suck. Like,
dude, I ran so before I was at DM, I ran a website. It was a media company called Which Test One. It was like split testing, evangelism, all this fun stuff. And we ran a conference for a couple of years, invited Google to speak at it. I had to stop their speech midway. I cut them. I said, no, you can't, like, you're not talking about that. I'm going to now change this topic right now. And then I decided to take it from there. They never went to another one of our conferences again, but like they have their talk tracks, and that's what they're going to do. And that's all they're going to do. Because he was trying to tell like marketers, like people in like the conversion rate optimization space, like everybody needs an app. I was like, shut up. Not everybody needs an app. Get out of here. We're done. Because I wanted him to talk about like split testing on apps themselves. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to let you talk.
That's the thing. I think they're just so big. It's just kind of like,
oh my God, they don't care.
No, well, they don't have to care. It's like, if you think like, oh, well, we could buy and sell your business with like change from today, like the transaction fees from today. It's like, okay, whatever. But PPC is big talk, because I think the writing on the wall is that it's getting more expensive, and what are we going to do? Well, for me, I always say like, hey, you got to start worrying about lifetime customer value, not just getting the customer, but how do you keep them forever? But let's talk about getting them in the first place. So what are the latest and greatest tactics that you've seen?
And like in terms of like latest and greatest, there isn't a whole, like I was just on a call with Josh Nelson's crew and did a roundtable with some of the bigger names in PPC like there. And it was funny, like when people were talking about it, like there's no more like ninja tricks anymore. That stuff's gone. It is getting the basics right. And then also kind of like throwing it old school again, in terms of like dedicated landing pages for each type of campaign, making sure those so you can get better attribution, right? Like attribution software stinks. It's like we're chasing our digital tails, trying to figure out something that's just not gonna help us in the long run. It makes us feel better about our marketing, but it's not gonna help the bottom line. But really, the latest and greatest for me in PPC is if you offer PPC services at your agency, and you're not doing landing page services and including that in there, you're not doing PPC. That's it. That is 100. That's it. Like being able to send traffic. We're traffic brokers. Like if you're doing paid media,
love that.
That's not that hard. Like converting the traffic is what's unbelievably difficult. And if you don't have control of that, that's the only thing you'll have control of soon. Google's going to keep pulling back control. PMax was their first attempt at doing it, and one of their biggest attempts at doing it. Had a bunch of pushback, but it worked really, really well. Like e-commerce, like sucked butts for the people that were doing lead gen. You couldn't do it. Like you got all spam leads, and that was it. Because the further up in the funnel you are, those signals that Google is going to be sending aren't going to be as tight to that conversion action that you're going to be going after. And then they're like, cool, well, we have this thing that now every media buyer or media buying agency gets, that PMax equals e-commerce. Then they rolled out, hey, now we have this thing called demand gen, which is just going to be like PMax, but for the lead gen folks that we really love. And that one stinks, right? It's so they're trying to get away with seeing how much they can take from agencies, because the fact of the matter is agencies and Google they're out of alignment. We're trying to get things for as cheap as possible. They're trying to get it for as much as they possibly can, right? They want all the money. They don't care about the results. We want the best results for the least amount of money. We're at odds, and they're going to be consistently trying to rig the game. I mean, look at some of the stuff that's going on right now in terms of like the litigation and like the antitrust lawsuits and all that other fun stuff with like, hey, we need to make more money, so let's just charge more. It's been a wild ride.
That's not even a bad one. There's one that I saw, and it was some TikTok video that of course got pulled very shortly after. But one of the cases basically claims that they're not just sending you to landing pages or to search results based on what they want. They're literally changing the keyword phrase that you typed in order to get you to whatever results that you want.
Oh, I mean, they're like how they're doing everything. All match types are completely like mangled now. Oh. Like exact match isn't exact. Like if you're like, you need to be investing a ton of time in just building your negative keyword lists. Like and then in some cases, don't even look at the keywords anymore. Just look at the search terms that are coming through. Like that, like you're doing more like, it's more pruning than anything. Like Google ads is not sexy, right? It is not sexy at all. It is gardening. You're digital gardeners right now, trying to make sure that like though you're taking out any of these weird terms that are coming in, because Google is just trying to get as many like impressions to get you to charge you more every single time. By no means am I saying don't do Google though. Like that's how all ad platforms work. That's how all you have to play the game, but you have to play it right. So whenever it's such a hard thing when someone's like, what's the latest and greatest, or what's the latest hack? It's like, funny story, there isn't one right now.
Or it's back to the old stuff. Like we have to manually create the funnel. We have to manually link everything. You have to manually. It's just like, oh my gosh, I thought this was all going to be like PMax solved everything. Yeah. But I think there is kind of an over reliance on kind of the generative AI stuff. And honestly, AI is not as good as it was 6 months ago. Like, the webinar I just gave, I was like, it was a simple prompt. I was like, oh yeah, this will be a piece of cake. Like sometimes it was working. That's like what Axel was there. It was like a meeting, and it was like 5 minutes. I was like, what the heck is happening? Like, how did it get so much worse than what it was? And I think it's probably just growing pains. My real theory is that they all have bigger, not Google, but the rest of the guys have like bigger services that are going to come out in the near future, and they're all going to launch. It's like a nuclear arms race where it's like, hey, whoever presses the button first, then we'll all have to launch our big service. But I think that'll be Q1. So you got a little bit of time. But in the meantime, get back to the base. So let's just get back to the basics of PPC. What is, a strategy, just a basic strategy that somebody could use and get reasonable results after they set up their first campaign?
I mean, generally, like you're going to be looking at like standard campaign structures. And I'm going to be looking at this through the lens of, hey, you're serving local businesses, because that's where all our data is at. So we work primarily with agencies that are working with service, like home service providers and those types of people. So they have fairly simplistic campaigns, but simple doesn't mean like it's still not difficult. Like it's still it's simple, and it's very atomic in terms of how you're doing your structures. So you're going to base everything down into brand keywords. We have another one called like brand plus, so brand subsidized. So you're taking some of your non-branded keywords that are like really expensive, and if you have any sort of brand authority, you create another grouping that's called brand plus. Then you have non-brand. Then you can go competitor if you want to go that route. If you do that, and say you're going after, like, you're a plumbing company in Austin and you're trying to, play with the big dogs and do a competitive campaign against like Roto-Rooter. You need to make sure, if you're doing a competitor campaign, that the people who are taking phone calls know that that's coming in, because some people are going to be clicking your link if you outrank them at that particular time, calling in thinking it's Roto-Rooter. So if they're like, hey, I want to speak to someone there, and they're like, oh, I meant to call this person, instead of saying, nope, wrong number, and then hanging up on them, that person taking the call is going to have to be like, no, like, we do everything that they're doing there. We're a local business. Like, let's talk. And then so they have to have a different sales pitch versus those, like the standard, we take incoming calls, right? But when we're looking at local businesses, if you're running competitive campaigns, there's more work that has to be done post-click or post-call to make sure that you're actually converting the folks. And then you have remarketing campaigns, assuming that you're in an industry that you're allowed to remarket in, because not all of them you can, specifically if you're getting into like the health space or anything along those lines. That's really the big thing. And I think conceptually, like if you break out those campaign types, making sure that you're doing one, like for services as well, like break out services underneath those. So don't try to be like, we do all plumbing, like break it out into like, are you doing emergency? Are you doing like sump pumps? Are you doing like sewer? Like, what are you doing? And go after those types of keywords. And then you start getting one-to-one with those types of landing pages as well. They could be very similar. They could share a bunch of assets, but you want to make sure that you're getting very granular, because it's going to be easier for you to see like what your return on investment is. And then you don't have to go through that question of like, how's my attribution doing? Like, you don't have to worry about that as much, because you're keeping a singular line going across.
I love that.
I think on the other side too, it's just when you're thinking about your ads and your ad copy. So one of the things we actually just developed, and I'm doing a YouTube series on this now, is we developed a piece of software called PPC Reveal. And what that does is it actually just scrapes Google ads, like based off of search queries that you put in and the locations that you're going after. And you can just start seeing who the heck is advertising, right? Like I said, we're digital, like we're like media brokers. So we're sending traffic places, but a lot of people aren't thinking about what happens after, like in terms of the ad or in terms of the post-click experience. And that's again, where you have all the control, right? So when I look at like the different ads that are running out there, there's all these great, companies that are showing up, like they are bidding for the right keywords. They're showing up for the right stuff. But then you look at how they position themselves. You look at how they position the offer. You look at how they implement like consistency from the keyword or the search query typed in to the ad itself. And then you go next to the landing page. And 9 times out of 10, actually, no, that'd be 10%, 15% of the people that are running ads right now in the local service businesses, from what I've been seeing from my kind of breakdowns, roughly 15% of them are only using landing pages. Only 15%. That is awful. So that is so awful.
Did they just drop them into the homepage? Is that what they do?
Homepage, or I always thought the homepage was the worst that you could possibly send somebody to from PPC. There is something worse than that. It is your deep funnel SEO pages. Oh. So because those pages aren't conversion oriented, right? And they think, oh, I have a service page, I'll just send them there. But no, like those are the ones being like, if you need an emergency plumber, like it's not helpful. And it's them just trying to like rank for particular keywords. And they're very unhelpful. They're not reiterating the promise that was made in the ad, right? So deep, like your deeper service SEO pages can actually convert significantly worse than your homepage if your homepage follows basic practices, right? If like your homepage is at least reiterating what's in the ad, you're going to be seeing things like, oh yeah, like cool. Like if they say we show up 24/7, so 24/7 emergency support. If you land on a homepage, even though there's navigation, there's all these other distractions, there's all the chatbots, there's all this other stuff happening. But if you still have that line, 24-hour like support, like click here to get help or click here to get a plumber, it's going to perform. It's going to perform. But it's not going to perform on like a deeper page like that. It's wild. It is absolutely wild. I
can't believe, sometimes I take a step back from things like that, like PPC. I haven't done PPC in years now. And I'm like, it probably got better. Like there's some kind of automated solution.
We're in an echo chamber. We are in an echo chamber of people that find marketing interesting, right? That is what we're a part of. So we think that is like table stakes. It is by no means table stakes. Like automation, not a table stake.
No.
Like landing pages for your ads, not. And in fact, yeah, it's so much not a table stake. I'm glad you said that. It is revolutionary to some companies. So as an agency provider, like 2 things. One, you're likely undercharging completely because this stuff is revolutionary and business changing to them. So you're likely completely undercharging right now for like how revolutionary some of these concepts are for these businesses. And the bigger the business gets, the more revolutionary it is. Like that's what I'm seeing, like large service companies, they don't understand automation, right? They just want more calls. They just want to be able to get more money, right? So you're likely undercharging because like you can start printing money when you add in particular automations. If you're doing landing page work, if you're doing all like the stuff that's table stakes for us, that's revolutionary for them. The other thing, I said words like automation and those things. They don't care about those words. They don't care at all about those types of words. They only care about the results. So you're likely undercharging because you see this as almost blasé. It's kind of this table stakes. It's whatever it is. It's easy for you, not for them. It's revolutionary and business changing. 2, we're all marketing nerds. We want to talk about marketing all the freaking time. Talk about all these like cool leading metrics or like, hey, there's this new thing I'm doing. They don't care. They just want to know, like, and they want you to be in alignment with their goals. Speak to that only. You don't need to show them how the sausage is made. In most cases, that's going to cause more problems, right? So doing those 2 things, regardless of what channels you're working in, what services you provide, that's kind of the big one. So in PPC, like, it's like, we don't need to tell, like, especially with our clients and our clients that work with us at Invisible, they're all agencies who bolted on. Most of them weren't PPC pros. They're mostly like SEO people, Facebook people, anything along those lines. Like, we need to bolt on a service, but we don't want to hire internally, and I don't want to become the expert. So they use us. They maintain the relationship, which means they also don't really know all of the lingo and all of those types of things. And they didn't. So when they're using us, we're just kind of like piping that stuff in and be like, hey, you don't have to worry about like visibility, engagement, convert. Like, you don't need to worry about that stuff. We worry about that for you. Don't like talk to them about the one thing they care about. How many leads are they getting and how much is it costing them? And what is that turning into for business? Talk about those 3 things and those 3 things only. We've got the rest. And we can break it down as technical or as non-technical as they need to. But we always say kind of pull back from that. The more that you can pull out from that, like, the better, because your local dentist isn't going to care about PMAX. They just won't.
Yeah, doesn't know what it is. Don't care.
Yeah.
Don't even understand.
Yeah. Exactly. And shouldn't, and rightfully shouldn't. Like, I remember Ryan used to tell this story. I don't know if he still does in presentations, where he was going to the dentist and the dentist recognized him. He was like, "Oh, you're Ryan Dice. You're that marketing guy. I went to Traffic and Conversion Summit." He's like, "I don't want to go to Traffic and Conversion. Go to dentist conferences. Like, it's like go get good at dentistry. Don't get good at marketing." Because that's not gonna do the thing.
That's a great point. Well, it's actually kind of a relief, because sometimes you think like, oh, all these marketing is becoming AI driven, and there's no solution here for us, and there's no space for us in the future. It's like, I was literally concerned about PMAX and the GA.
Oh, me too. I was freaking out.
I was like, oh, you're just gonna plug in, like, I have a dentist office and I have $500. Go. Like, that's literally what I thought they were gonna get to, and instead they made this just mess.
That's what they wanted. They wanted to get to that. Yeah, they wanted to get to that.
They just can't.
And they can't. And the problem is too, it's like, and I think all of us know this, being in the space that we've been in, being in the agency space for any amount of time. And I know a lot of these faces here, they've been in it for a very long time. That generally the people paying the least amount for something want the most explanation or the squeakiest wheels, right? So say, for instance, if they completely, like, say tomorrow, they're like, PMAX works exactly the way that you just said, Mark. And now agencies, like PPC agencies, don't exist anymore, right? They're gone. Like, let's just pretend, thought experiment. When that plumber goes in to put PMAX and he's like, I'm putting my $500 into this, and they're going to want to know what's happening with it. It's not just a black box, and Google won't be able to get away from that. They'd have to have support staff that would come in. They'd have to have explanations that would come into this. And the people spending the least are going to be asking the most. And so based off of how much people are actually spending on ads and the people that are in those lower tier budgets, that would obliterate Google's like search, Google's like customer care. Like, they would take on so much more stuff, because they've pretty much outsourced like account management to agencies. And so if they get rid of that, they would just completely obliterate like what they're doing in terms of account management, which is barely anything. It's mostly them calling me like, your agency sucks, or any sort of customer support. So they couldn't make that happen. They just couldn't, because so many people would want to know, what are you doing with my money? This is not like, and so when things are going great, they'll be cool. Like, let's double my budget. How come when I doubled my budget, I didn't get double the leads? Yeah. And then someone's going to have to explain that to them. They're not going to spend the time learning that. They shouldn't be spending the time learning that. Right. No. So that's a fun conversation every time. Like,
well, it's actually a relief, because it's almost like, for website development, that's what my agency was all about. I was worried with, Wix. Wix launches this big, Super Bowl campaign showing, the guy in the restaurant dragging and dropping, and he has this amazing restaurant website. And I was like, oh, that was total BS. Like, even the simplest application, unless it literally is like, make me a restaurant website, and then the website just happens, which that's not possible. No, it doesn't matter. It sounds like PMax and all the promised solutions that they had are the same way. It's like, yeah, it's sort of easier, but you still need to know things about things and track it and test and do all the work, which there's
the boots on the ground. And I remember, like, when when DigitalMarketer started the agency, like the certified partner agency program, when that was announced, the whole point there was that Ryan was trying to sell on that was that, hey guys and gals, like, we're great at kind of like building out frameworks at DigitalMarketer. Like, you're great at building out frameworks, building you the trainings, getting the things you need to do the job. But when we tried doing our own service side business, we sucked at it. Totally, because we couldn't be the people being the boots on the ground if we were doing all that other work to kind of arm agencies with everything they need to connect the dots, to be the ones on the ground doing the stuff, and then giving us that feedback loop, right? That's why the program started, right? That's why it existed, because there are people, like, you always need the people that are going to be doing the work, and then and that like doing that type of work. They like working with the clients. They like solving their problems. They like implementation. Right? Like, AI and those types of things, whether it's in, website development, ads, copy, anything along those lines, it can only solve to so far, because you need to have, there's always going to be a human element for at least until, like, we have, like, robot people. Like,
I think it's general like AI, that, right?
Yeah,
artificial general intelligence. That's the only way. Everything else is impossible. It's kind of like I teach the customer value journey prompt. I have a single prompt. You plug in like almost nothing, and then it spits out a customer value journey. And before, that would take a professional marketer, an hour, 3 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is. And even though you can now do it in seconds, it doesn't mean that you understand anything that's generated. So the fact that you could have the outcome doesn't matter, because you don't understand how to implement it, which means
exactly
marketers still have jobs. So you heard it here. You're still going to have a job.
We're still good.
Because no matter how simple, until you have, like, literally you're talking to, like, hey AI Justin, how should I build my campaign? And AI Justin says, oh, I'll build it for you. What do you want to know? Oh, well, I want to know why I've doubled my budget. I didn't double my traffic. Oh, well, let me explain to you how this works. And then until you have that level of AI where you're literally talking to a person.
And even then, because there's still going to have to be, there's still going to, like, people want to hear, like, it's weird. You have to kind of break things down sometimes. Like, their company's not special in some regards, and they always think that they have, like, they're like, but my company's different. And they're like, even if it got to the point where it's like, hey, generally when you're scaling up spend things, in order, like, you start paying, things get inefficient because you're starting to pay more to own the market. Like, if anybody's done, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but, like, when you've looked at Google's just performance estimates, when they do that, everything's on a curve, right? And if you look at how that curve breaks down, like, it's, very cheap but very low leads, very cheap marginally or whatever, and then you have that curve where you're hanging in. It's like, now things are starting to get more competitive, and then you get into the flat, and the flat only kind of keeps going up in terms of, like, the number of conversions you're getting, but the cost is almost exponential, right? Because at that stage, things are getting wildly inefficient, because Google's business model is to not allow people to own an entire market, like, on Google ads. Like, think about it. The risk for Google, if one day, like, let's talk about, like, the PM space. So when I was at Teamwork, we were spending a butt ton of money on Google ads, right? All of the money on Google ads. And then ClickUp, our main competitor, who was always stealing our impression share at that point in time, they got $400 million in funding. Do you want to know what happened to, like, our impression share after they got that money? Just demolished it. Absolutely just demolished it, right? So when And they were willing to do that because they're like, we can float the loss here to be inefficient in our paid right now. Like they'd be getting marginal more leads, but spending triple at that stage. And that's what we would have had to have done to compete. And so it really pushed some things down. And so but now let's thought experiment again. Let's pretend that at that point in time, ClickUp was able to own the market completely, that they just beat everybody else out. They'd have to spend an ungodly amount of money, but let's just pretend. It's not in Google's best interest for ClickUp to do that. Why? Yeah. What happens if ClickUp's like, I want to go to Bing now, or I want to go all in on Facebook now? All the other advertisers pulled away at this point because they can't spend money. So then Google loses a significant amount of cash. So that is why things get inefficient when you're trying to own a market on a particular platform. So whenever we're working with our folks, like when we look at Google's estimates, we're like, where you want to live in your ideal scenario is on that curve, middle to upper part of the curve. That's where you live. Anything outside of that, when you start landing in the flat, that's when you start saying, hey, we either need to diversify like services we're going after to get more competitive there, or we need to look at different channels. Right. And so that's kind of one of the breakdowns. Again, there's again, no hacks anymore or anything like that. But when you're thinking about Google and like how to be competitive there, that's kind of one of the ways I break it down.
Blew my mind again, because you're so right. There's just no incentive to let anybody own any market because you'd miss out. And honestly, personally, I'd much rather have a bigger list of customers paying a little bit less money because it's more secure, it's more trackable, it's more scalable. And since they're a public company, like you have to worry about those things, because if you're not showing growth every single quarter,
risk mitigation.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. The whole system is just not great. So, well, for me, I always go back to content's the solution, because if you get people to trust you as the authority, they'll come to you before typing anything into Google. And then you could control, or somewhat control your following and control how much money you can make off of that following, since you just keep the same customers all the time. So in that regards, do you have any strategy for PPC in terms of, I know you need a landing page, you need specific keyword targeting that is related to the landing page, of course. But do you have any techniques for kind of, vetting the customers? Because you don't want those one-time customers. You want the potentially long-term customers. Is there anything that advertisers could do to cultivate that through their advertising?
That one's tough. Like it's tough to especially like when you're doing things with just like search intent. Because the thing with Google in general, like think about like as it differentiates from when you're building like custom audience lists for like Facebook and other types of platforms that are going to be using more demographics to target versus like intents based off search query. And that's such a difficult thing to explain to some clients sometimes, because they're like, hey, like these leads you're getting me, they're the wrong, they're not the right revenue stage or XYZ other things. You're like, I can't really do a whole lot with that. What you can start doing is looking at the keywords that generally bring those types, and you can make an assumption on that, but you could end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you throw that into like a negative. So I guess if I were to kind of to answer your question on the Google side of things, it's really hard to maximize for like repeat customers or high LTV based off of just search intent alone. It requires, having your tracking in place and doing retro analysis on like what keywords are bringing the best customers, and seeing if you can get any sort of data story there. You might not.
That's really hard.
Because then if you're getting into
long term too.
Yeah, and Google's kind of going away with some of their like custom audience lists or those types of lookalikes they used to do, or similar lookalikes that they were doing. They've sunsetted most of that stuff. And then and so if you're going after, so how I look at it is, if you're going after like targeting like certain likes of like firmographics, demographics, those types of things, you're always going to be doing a little bit better with like social platforms, just because they have those data points. Google, sure, like you can get like geo, like where they're running those searches and what they're interested in. And then really you're just having to, make sure that you're capturing their attention and then sticking true to what they're saying. like in the page. So I think another trick that you could do if you really wanted to kind of just kind of beat the system a little bit there, it's going to be like adding significant friction or friction terms in the ad itself. So that would be self-qualifying. And then on the landing page, like make them jump through some hoops. Like there, it's not going to happen. Again, it's not going to happen in the targeting. It's not going to happen in the keyword stuff immediately. We talked about some longer term things that you could do that I doubt you'll find patterns in. But when you're looking at like, how can I call out my exact type of customer? So for example, like for us, like one of the, and this is an agency for agency type thing, but like one of the ads, I know, so this is for our plumbing agency. So one of our local service businesses, and all of our ads, if they're running searches for that, like we're trying to find plumbing businesses. So it's a little different than the actual plumbers. But we just say, hey, if like, are you doing like this much in revenue per year? Like if you're not doing this, don't click this.
Oh, that's yeah, that's a super cool.
So we call out certain things, just like if this is not you, then definitely don't click this ad. And then we will disqualify people in kind of like the form process as well. Like what is it? The marketing convention states like the less friction there is, the better conversions you get, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, quantity. But if you want to do quality, and if you're doing it in a place where you're not able to get pure demographic details or play off of demographics, firmographics, or anything like that, then just call it out in the copy. Like that would be my attack, my plan.
Well, I think that's
yes, and you'll get those. You'll get those. How dare you tell me not to do this? So maybe you could probably run a test on that campaign and then like do a call out for don't you dare click this thing. But it's actually the people you want. And then just reverse it. But it's wild. Like I think on the copy side of things, people are forgetting like that, like that's again the stuff you have the most control on. So for me, anything that has to do with paid media is what are the factors you can get the most control, and then maximize there. And I think that's going to be in how you position things, how you stand out. And then one warning, and I see this a lot, like reviewing a lot of different, like an unbelievable number of ads in the local services space. There's some things that are just table stakes, and there's other things that in terms of copy or offers. And so you have to understand in the niche that you're working in, what's stuff that has to show up for them to even consider you. And then to avoid like just, like not talking about those things in the ad, just because you want to be different, right? So you have to, it's a game of like, what are the table stakes or like for me to even have this conversation or be considered? And then moving from that to being like, how can I have a play on those types of things to then entice them to take action, right? So just something to be aware of when you're thinking about ad copy, offers, and those types of things. And you don't have a lot of characters to work with here. So it gets a little difficult, but yeah, that's something that we're constantly kind of battling with and trying to figure out what that looks like.
It's so crazy because at the beginning of this year, I mean, I literally, it was, writing my AI book, and a big part of it was just this, thing that's going to happen to ads. And I was just like, so wrong, because I really thought it was going to be like, okay, well, this is just automated. That's what's going to be driving up costs. And that's why everybody's going to have to get on the ball. But everything you're saying really just reinforces that you need to know a lot about your customer. You need to know a lot about your offer. You need to understand how those things are connected. And then because it's such a pain in the butt to find these people in the first place, you're going to need to keep them forever. So that's what it's coming down to, which was just unexpected. I didn't think everything was going to go as crazy as it did. And I also thought that AI was going to continue to improve. And honestly,
it's gone the other way.
Other way. It was like, oh, it started out up here, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, man. When I typed in this exact same thing 6 months ago, the result was 10 times better than it is today. Now that's still not useful and everything, but my concern that every marketer was going to be out of business just because we'll be able to do all this additional stuff. I mean, even the email marketing side too is just a mess. Like it is a mess, and that's actually made our jobs not more fun, but more necessary. So I think if you are a marketer and you're worried about your profession, don't worry about it, at least for the next year, I would say, unless something drastic changes.
I think it's one of those things like service, I'm speaking more also marketers in the marketing agencies. I think marketing agencies have persisted for a very long time for a reason, right? They've existed. There's been a definitive need for them, for companies of all sizes, because, and I talk to a lot of people about this, like, you can't always, in most cases, you can't hire all A players everywhere. Like, whether you even if you had infinite money, people might not want to work there and do those types of things. So but you always need to have positional players, and agencies can be an A player for that particular need, service that needs to be done. And it's hard to hire. It's hard to find the toppest of top talent. And man, a full company of just go-getter A players would drive me freaking nuts. You can't have it. Yeah. You can't have it. And it would be very expensive. So it would you'd be lacking in a lot of things. So agencies have existed and done so well for so long because, again, they're the ones that do the work. They're people that like the process. They like to do. They like to solve, right? They also have a unique perspective on how to get the jobs done, and they bring that unique professional perspective to large, small organizations as a whole. It's I don't know. I think even as these tools get more integrated into things, because with AI, it was wild how fast it got to the general population. Normally, when we have marketing nerd stuff, it stays with us kind of. But this was one that it spun out real fast. And one of my buddies, Andy Crestandina at Orbit Media, if you don't read his blog, you should. He's amazing. But he did a survey earlier on in kind of the AI boom, where he was asking consumers, how much is this on your radar? And it was surprising how many people that are outside of our nerd circle were well aware of what this thing was, and looking at it as a a general positive of it's going to make things a lot easier for me, XYZ. So that was when I got scared for a little bit because it got so just ingrained in the cultural zeitgeist. Everybody knew about it. They made a South Park episode out of that. They only make those episodes out of the biggest of biggest things, right? Yeah. So it got ingrained. It got ingrained instead of staying in our nice little marketing bucket. So that's where things were a little. But I was you saw me write posts and stuff. Where I was hey, I had this whole thing of one of my least favorite phrases during that whole time was you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by a marketer who knows AI. I still think at that point I was you're going to get replaced by AI. It doesn't matter. And then I've pulled that back. I'm less of a sky is falling type scenario, but and for the reasons that I think we've discussed today, and that there's a bias, there's a human bias. It's weird to say it this way, but there is a human bias, and people value the opinions and the experience of humans. And this conversation and talking about us as humans is going to become more prevalent as the years go on. So it feels weird talking about it. It's almost like sci-fi, but there is a huge, but there is this ingrained human bias on things. It's hey, the machine said this, but we need to verify it. Do we? Maybe in some cases, but that bias is going to exist it could probably exist for ever, because people are going to have biases to who they are.
Sometimes I don't think it's a bias, because I do think, and this is recent, that I've started to really appreciate human-made products way more than anything else. And honestly, because I eat a lot of donuts sometimes, human-made donuts are better than machine-made donuts. It's going as simple as that. I think there's an element that we enjoy about the inconsistency and imperfection of human delivered services and products. And so, my main concern was just yours, where it's just all be automated and you'll talk to the machine will do all the work. And I'm I don't know, because our demands and expectations are just so wild and crazy that you never know what you're going to get, and there's no way a machine's going to predict that, especially for program. Now, with all that said, I do think that the real revolution with AI has nothing to do with what we think about it, hey, machine, do this work. I think the main thing that's going to happen is that it's going to make programming much cheaper. And if you can make programming much cheaper, now I, as somebody who has an application idea or something to maybe improve my pay-per-click results, can now program something custom way cheaper than it could before. And this is why it could have a big impact on like accounting and finance and any administration thing, just because of that. Like I can make custom software.
Yeah, I think and I'm plugging Andy again because he's really in this AI space right now. He's thinking of it in that same way that you just said it, where he's not thinking about, hey, write me this thing, or hey, do this. He's looking at it in a way where he's saying, he's really just, he's using it as like a way to structure, like working through structured data and then finding holes based off of kind of the question he's trying to answer. So here's an example of like how I did that, and I wouldn't be able to do that without large scale like machine learning in place. So so I told you guys about PPC Reveal. One of the things that we do with that is we have an export. It's a PDF export of all of the advertisers' visibility, all of their ads that showed up, when they showed up, and all this other fun stuff. Most of that stuff is easy to consume by a human. Like you can look at, hey, like here's how the advertiser visibility breaks down. Cool, I've gotten enough out of that. Where it's really difficult is when you have, say, 800 ads to review or 1,000 ads to review across 600 pages of a report. That becomes almost impossible for somebody to handle like trends and like what's missing, what's working, what's not. That becomes very, very difficult for a human to do in a short amount of time. It's impossible in a short amount of time, and it's still going to be inaccurate even over a longer period of time, right? Because we think we're good at spotting trends. We're not. Like we're just not. I like to think we are. I like to think I am. I like to think I'm different, but no,
I know
we're all kind of bad at it. Even if you feel like you're good at it, you're not. So what I did was I exported the PDF, I threw it into ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, I asked it to kind of, I ask initial questions to get them to structure data correctly in the way that I can get the output that I'm looking for. And so like, hey, break down this report into, it's like tell me about the report, like and the different data points that are in there. Cool. It does all those. Oh, great. And then I said, now what I want you to do is based off of visibility, like take a look at the ad copy for all of the ad copy, like, cause they had identified that. And I said, what I want to know is what are the offers and themes that you're finding across the board for the top visible ads. And then it just pumped out all of this great information. We're saying, hey, in this case, for the area that you're focusing in, everybody is focusing on, I think it broke down, like they were doing a lot of like money off, like, hey, it's only $99 or you save $50, you do this type of stuff. And nobody was really doing like something that's more like free consultations or like no, what was it? Or free consultations or like, free quotes or anything like that. Everybody kind of went with transactions, which can then you're like, okay, well, that's an interesting thing to do. And then you have to ask yourself, well, is the transaction thing or transactional type messaging, is that table stakes or is that something I can mess with? That's where you run your test. Mm-hmm. And then what's interesting is how framing changes between when you're talking about, hey, it only costs $99, you're saving $50 versus saying like, hey, you get this free whatever. There's like, you're in transactional mode on the first one, which can be good if people are in that transactional mood, but also anybody spending money feels like pain. So if they feel like they're gaining something versus you taking money away from them, they might interact differently. So those ads will play very differently to the people that are clicking. Then it just gets down to what are the queries that they're typing into there and understanding whether those are transactional ones or not. Right. So that's how I was able to take like, hey, I have this it's a useful report, but that report is meant to be shock and awe, to be like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Client, look at all this great stuff that I just found. Let's go run some things. And they go, oh my gosh, you know everything about Google ads. Like, let's hire you. Right. That's the purpose of it. But to make it more useful and to make it something that I could actually really, really pull things on, like, I was like, let's just toss it into ChatGPT, get the data structured in a way that it can handle it, and then get me the output that's desired. That's where ChatGPT is going to be, and AI in general is going to be the best. And where I think a hole in the market is right now, and I shouldn't say this out because I kind of want to build this tool. It's it's a structured data tool. So it'd be like almost like Zapier, where it's like, hey, I'm exporting this from ActiveCampaign, but I need to put it into this, like to be able to manipulate data. Like, help me. Like, so it's like for the different AI tools. So like you get a list of all outputs for AI tools and how they input data and how they structure things maximally. And then you look at things on the, for all the other tools that marketers would be using or like finance folks should be using and all these other things. And you say, hey, what does our export look like? Because that people don't think about that. Like people don't think, like, especially even software companies. Like I have a software company. I didn't think about how our exports were looking. They kind of look like garbage. They're not useful.
It's like the
enough.
last
It's the last.
like, oh,
it's the last thing, and
it's whatever.
And in the world we're moving into, like people are going to spend way more time working, like structuring their data in a way that's useful for the AI platforms, the other things that they're using. So that's like there's something cool there. I'm still like, it's still a half baked idea in my head, but would be kind of
no, do it. Yeah, because and really, I think the thing that we try to do, and I've seen this with a bunch of AI companies. I just talked about this, where it's just like the AI companies try to smush all these features in, like, oh no, it's not just this. It's like ChatGPT, and it's also like this one over here, and it can do this over here. And then the consumer's looking at it, or the business professional is just like, I can't even tell what this does. And that happened with HeyGen, where it's just like the developers just have a huge disconnect with what people actually want and what's actually
developers
good.
love to build, man. They just love
to build. And it's like, well, I love having a billion features. It's like, well, that doesn't matter. I need it to do this one thing. And actually you having all those other features actually is not a positive for me. That means that this might just be another side feature, and I need this to be really good. So I think that's a lesson for everybody. Just focus on one thing.
I'm a huge proponent of like micro SaaS, like one thing, do it well. And then that's the reason why, like, and focus is critical. Like in agency, it's like, hey, you should be niching down. Why? You're focused on one thing. You can repeat that type of stuff. You can talk the language. All of your stuff kind of works together. That same philosophy kind of plays across all business types, not just agencies, but like, for like PPC Reveal, the one thing it does, it's like, we find Google ads for local service companies. Like we find who's advertising, and we share those ads with you, and we show you like who's showing up the most. That's what it does. Will we do have like product rollouts for the future? Sure. But like, will they be under the PPC Reveal name? I don't know. Maybe not. Because I do like the idea that that's a very simple, like it does what it says it's going to do, and it does it well. And that's
fast. No,
exactly.
Well, I think that's going to be I run articles called Stupid Simple Solutions, where I was like, you know what? If your solution isn't so obvious that I could literally not even pay attention as I'm implementing it, then it's too much work, and I'm not going to spend time learning your application during your trial period, and then whatever. So I think everybody's coming on the same page, where it's like, no, just do the one thing and you're good to go. And then now you can develop that stuff way faster than you could before. And that's going to be the big change. So big change still coming. It's just going to be way different. Now, I did suck up the entire hour. Does anybody have any questions regarding PPC and the future of marketing and humanity? Let's say
humanity specifically.
I'm still very worried about humanity. That's my main concern, really, because I'm like, man, I do think things are going to change for a bunch of different reasons, but it's still a good tool, still awesome. It's just not godlike as we were kind of expecting, especially at this point. I thought, man, by the end of this year, entire departments are going to be unnecessary because this stuff is so awesome, and it's just hasn't happened. For the most part. I mean, there are some cool tools out there, but that is good to hear about the PPC, because sometimes you look at the PPC situation, you're just like, you know what? I'm just stupid. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand how these numbers fit together. I don't understand what changes what. And it's good to hear that it's just like, no, that might be by design, or not by design. I think it is because of the design, but they tried to make it better and then just epically failed.
Yeah, people are still going to be necessary in that. And it's just, and again, the whole thing is, it just goes back to go back to the basics. It's make things as much of as one-to-one or atomic units as you can when you're building this stuff out, and then really work within what you can control. Like Google owns match types, they own all the other things, and they're going to continue to nerf those or mess with those as they work with other things. Kind of hang out and optimize for what you're in control of is pretty much my
do marketing. There's no magic for that. All right, we do have a question from Ming though. He said, if local clients are just starting out on PPC, how to ease them in, especially if they don't see the ROI yet. So setting budgets,
that's a really good so it all starts kind of like with the initial conversation. One, when they're getting involved with it, you have to be like, hey, this isn't you give Google cash and you get money out right away. here's generally it, like Google has, like, they talk about a 60, 90-day learning period. So at the very least, they need to be with you 90 days to get things relatively efficient. Right. And that's going to be, and the speed of that learning period is going to be dictated by the amount of budget they're spending. So the less they spend, the longer it's going to take for you to get enough conversions going in place for it to send the right signals back. Right. But how you ease them in is you always talk in ranges about everything. So one of the things that we have at IPPC, like, we've identified like 64 smart niches, partly because they're the ones we've worked in the most, but they tend to just work better on Google than other niches because there's an immediacy factor and all these other things. We have data points on like what a cost per lead is, like across the US. We're like, hey, if you're in roofing, it's going to be anywhere between like $75 and $150 when you have an account humming, which means if you're starting from scratch, you're going to be at 150 or above. And then if you're talking, you'll be, and this is I actually don't know if that's a number. So I saw Ming's face go, oh, I was like, but in any case, when you have ranges, you start with, hey, and like, you're going to start getting leads, but they're going to be inefficient because it's learning. And then over time, it's going to get into that range. And then what you do is you pitch the worst case scenario. You go, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, it's going to cost you about, let's say it's going to cost you 100's easier to work with. Say it's going to cost you $100 worst case scenario on average to generate a lead for your business. Then you ask them, what does that, like, you want to know more about like what's their average value per customer, and then you just kind of work backwards from there. If you're spending this much on that, that means you're getting this many leads. Your general close rate from these types of leads is this. Average value is about this. That means you'd be making about XYZ off of your investment. Does that work for you? And kind of start there. That's generally the conversation you want to have, because one, then you're not just talking about, I can send you leads. You're talking about their business, and they'll care that you're talking about that at that stage. But always talk in ranges, because and really break down, like, if they're brand new, if it's a brand new account, there's just like, it is going to be highly inefficient to start, and that this is a process. And the other thing that you want to break down is, because generally around like the 6-month mark is when clients are going to be like, what do they do exactly? I bet I could do this myself. And by do this, they don't do anything. They're not updating anything at all in there. And they tend to believe that. And what you want to be also breaking down is when you're talking about the sale of these things, like, hey, we're going to set things up. Setup costs you this much. We're going to be doing management. And what management looks like is this. We're doing this every day, this every week, this type of stuff, so that they get away from that. And then they also can start seeing like, oh, this isn't just a, black box I put money into and I get money back or I lose money. It's not a, what's that called? I was just in Vegas. Why can't I think? It's not a slot machine by any means. No. But always talk in ranges, get agreements on like those targets, and be like, what would success look like to them in 3 months? And then tell them by that 3-month mark, that's when you're going to be able to really start dialing things in, and things will get significantly more efficient. And kind of work from that. So that's how you kind of ease them in. And you can tell them, hey, it could take you a month or two to break even on this, but now you've had a channel that's seasoned, right? Being open and transparent about it. Do not be like, we can get you 100 brand new clients. Like we can 10X it. And because also most service companies can't 10X. Most service companies can't double. Most service companies, when they're coming to you and they need marketing help, they can grow by 20, 30% at best. Like what a 20% growth looks like for like a plumbing company means they need to hire more people. They need to get more trucks. They need to do all this other stuff. They might not be equipped to do that. So I hate the 10X whole concept, all that stuff, because most people can't. Like, they can't handle that. So why sell them that dream? What are you trying to get out of this, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Oh, I'd love it if I could get X, I'd love if I got like 30 new jobs a month. Cool. This is what it looks like to do that. Sorry, Gabriel. I just completely blew.
Wow, no. Well, the 10X, you would sell them on the program, right? Like, we're not just doing marketing, we're doing business development, and that's how you 10X. But no, that's a great point too, because I think setting the expectations from both sides. Like, what do you expect, and then what is actually possible? Because if you did 10X, you have 50 clients a month, and now I'm going to get you 500 clients, and you'd be like, okay, your business is broken.
People, they also won't believe you too. They're yeah, that's like every time, like because I'm in the marketing space and we're all in the marketing space, we all see those ads. We all see those ads of people like telling us anyways. And then also to answer your second question, Ming, there are minimum amounts of ad spend. It's going to depend on the niche specifically. And I look at ad spend in two ways. One's a recommended, which is going to be, that's the amount that we'd be able to kind of like expedite the learning or keep the learning period within that 45 to 60 days. That's what it would take to do this. Then you have dead floor. Like, if you're not spending this, we shouldn't be doing this. And so we have that broken out by different niches as well. If you go to the site, I think you can find it in one of our resources. We have that smart niche sheet for download. And you can just take a look. If you're in the services space, you can see what our dead drop is, as well as what our recommended budgets are. And I'm happy to drop a link in here as well.
Yeah. Put the link. All right. Cool. Well, that was a great session, Justin. I think you kind of verified a bunch of the things that I was kind of feeling about the situation. And I was like, I don't think things have changed like that much, or they've actually gotten worse in a bunch of ways. And that's kind of the case. So
I'm so glad.
Marketers are still in business.
Yeah. I'm so glad that I was actually on, because that's been my feeling. And we run at Google ads per month. We're probably doing around 2.5 million in ad spend a month for all of our clients. So we have a lot of stuff that we're seeing, but like, I always feel like I feel weird when I have to have the conversation, because I'm like, there's nothing new. It's kind of the same old stuff. And I was when it was on that roundtable yesterday, and it was 5 other people spending either what I'm spending or more. All of us were kind of saying the same thing. We're like, guys, like Google has Google ads has made a fundamental transition from, I need to identify all of these like long tail keywords to maximize the amount of like traffic I can get, like of profitable traffic I can get. Now it's kind of flipped. Now we're like Google ad pros are more of like the doorman at a club, being like, Google will send you all that traffic and they will find ways to keep sending you like stuff. As long as, and if you're not giving them the indicators to show like, hey, I don't want that, they're going to keep sending it. So now we're the bouncers. So it's flipped. It's flipped completely. And so think about it in those types of terms.
Yeah, it's just like the rest of life in general right now.
Yeah.
Everything's backwards. Well, thank you so much, Justin. Where can people learn more about you?
Oh, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm less active on posting, but like I am now, I guess, but like send messages. Like I check them. I talk with people. I get, I'm a people person, I guess. Also check out InvisiblePPC.com for kind of the white label ad side of things. If you're interested in taking a look at our software, it's ppcreveal.ai. And yeah, so those are kind of the 2 spots.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate your time. Always fun and informative. And in this case, relief, honestly, because I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with, this is where you step in, because I didn't look at it. I got you.
Michelle Gifford talking all things Instagram.
Oh, yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, she's actually speaking at TNC too. So it will be a blast. So tune in next week, and everybody have a great weekend. Hopefully you get some rest from the holiday before the more holiday starts.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all.
See you guys.